This is Community Forum, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. The effects of the Great Recession are still being felt. Many simply have to do more with less, and some seek to take advantage of the situation through predatory lending or loan modification. Our guest today is Manuel Flores, the Secretary of the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. He's here to talk about the problem and offer some advice for avoiding the traps that are out there. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Great. Let's start off by talking about you and what your department does with the state and for the residents here.
So I'm Manny Flores, the Acting Secretary of the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation on the state of Illinois. The Department of Financial and Professional Regulation is an agency that is charged with consumer protection and also through the regulation and supervision of more than 60 professions and also of financial services businesses like state chartered banks, state chartered credit unions, payday lenders, consumer installment lenders, and also title insurance lenders. So a very large group, also mortgage lending and mortgage companies as well to add to that group. So very large group of businesses and professionals. And our agency right now is really focusing on making sure that Illinois consumers understand what their rights are and also to provide them tips with regards to home borrowing, mortgage lending. As you indicated in your introduction, the topic of mortgage fraud, the topic of predatory lending and being on the lookout for mortgage fraud scams related to loan modification assistance is something that's very prevalent, not only in the state of Illinois, but across the country. So we're focusing a lot of our efforts to making sure that we're protecting Illinois consumers and providing fairness for them.
Now, you said it's prevalent in our state and across the country. How big of a problem is this for homeowners that are in trouble?
Well, what we saw, unfortunately, through the aftermath of the financial crisis that culminated in 2008 with the collapse of some very large banks and financial institutions, is that there was a practice in real estate and lending, residential lending, where individuals were being marketed loan products that did not have very favorable terms. These are subprime loans, loans that had very high interest rates or that had certain penalties or additional fees associated with those loans. Oftentimes we saw these loans where they would, you had maybe a decent interest rate for 1 or 2 years, and then all of a sudden that interest rate would jump to a different level.
Wow.
And in some instances, we also saw that the banks or the mortgage companies, rather, were just not being open in providing adequate disclosure to the borrower so that the borrower could make an informed decision about what she or he was bargaining for. So through that whole process, we've really been looking at this from a multi-pronged approach where we are encouraging education, information for the home buyer, where we are increasing the level of supervision and regulation on the mortgage companies, loan originators, and banks, and then also trying to and also looking at enhancing our fraud prevention activities in the agency to ensure that as we make reforms and changes to the system, that we also look out for individuals who may try to exploit really the plight of a lot of the home borrowers who are struggling, who are trying to work something out with their lenders, and even with the lenders themselves who may be victims of this type of fraud, having to deal with individuals who claim to represent distressed borrowers, but indeed are not representing anyone and are trying to take advantage and make money at the expense of the borrower and at the expense of the lending institution.
Okay, so you mentioned that some large institutions were not being completely forthcoming with all the terms of a loan, and what problems would that cause for our for the borrowers in our communities?
Well, what we're seeing is a lot of moderate income communities, and there have been studies done on this where, in particular, communities of color, where you saw certain patterns of where these individuals were paying more in higher interest rates, or in or ending up with loans that were not as favorable comparison to other communities, and that was troublesome. And what ended up happening in many instances is that individuals thought they really understood. They thought they understood the terms of their agreement, but then as maybe they lost a job, or maybe as if you were dealing with a dual income household, mom or dad loses a job, or maybe there's a reduction in pay, all of a sudden these folks were began to struggle in making those payments. They came to learn more about the details or the terms of the contract, and realized that that was not the best contract they could have bargained for. So what we've done is, through legislation, increase awareness of the kinds of loan products that are out there. We have this system that we call the Anti-Predatory Lending Database that is applied in 4 counties that tracks all mortgage loans in these counties. In particular, Cook County is one of them.
Why in 4 counties?
These were the counties in which we saw a lot of subprime activity, and there was the local support to incorporate this database, requiring the professionals in the mortgage lending space to file and record these loans. Cook County was the biggest county in Illinois, the most impacted county by the subprime lending market. And the way that this database works, is one of the most important features of the database is that it allows for, in the event that there are subprime features to the loan, there is a requirement that the borrower be provided housing counseling prior to closing on the loan. And what we have seen now through the implementation of the Anti-Predatory Lending Database for the last few years, that there is a correlation there seems to be a correlation at least, with the housing counseling trigger, and then whether or not the borrower then continues on with that original loan. We're seeing that the borrower ends up changing his or her mind, and a better loan is offered, or at least a loan that doesn't require the housing counseling is offered. And those tend to be loans that don't have subprime loan features. So that's a good thing for the consumer. We also think, though, that's a good thing for the industry, though. In the end of the day, it's a positive thing to be able for consumers to take out loans. We don't want to freeze up the credit either. We want to make sure that individuals who have the capacity to buy a home have access to credit, especially if they've worked for their credit, if they worked hard to have a good credit score. They should be able to, but let's say they don't make millions of dollars. Let's say that it's a more modest income family. They should still have access to credit to be able to buy a home if they have the capacity to do so.
Yeah, because it's part of it's an investment in their future. It's also an investment in the economy.
That's right.
The interest is also to just keep money flowing and the economy growing in that sense. But I want to come back to this database. This database is part of the larger educational efforts.
It's educational, but it's also part of our supervisory and regulatory efforts. I mean, this also gives us an opportunity to track certain types of loan products that are being offered. It also allows us to be able to track transactions, looking for trends regarding to fraudulent transactions. So it's a multifaceted, multi-purposed tool. The other tool that we use for educating and assisting consumers is the Illinois Foreclosure Prevention Network, which under the leadership of Governor Pat Quinn, we have developed a very robust and comprehensive program that allows individuals to attend mortgage relief projects, where we will match up the borrower with their lender to see whether or not the borrower may qualify for mortgage assistance, whether it's a loan modification or some other type of program that or product that the borrower may qualify for to help that borrower stay in their home. Or in the event that they no longer wish to stay in their home because they can no longer afford to make any type of mortgage payment, what is an alternative to what I would consider to be an inhumane removal of the family through eviction.
Right.
We want to avoid eviction and allow for a smoother transition for that family to be able to find alternative housing as opposed to just being kicked out to the curb.
Right. Because at the end of the day, although we're talking about investments and money, you are dealing with people. Essential need for a family or an individual housing or having a roof over their head.
While we're talking about the Illinois Foreclosure Prevention Network, I would like to make a plug. You can, for the viewing audience, you could visit keepyourhomeillinois.org. Keep Your Home, all one word. Keep Your Home Illinois, all one word, .org. And that website has information on some of these workshops that I just mentioned, and also other programs. One thing that people need to be cognizant about is all of the different types of lending programs available through the federal government. And such as the HARP program, the HAMP program, that look at financing or loan modification programs to try to bring down the monthly payment that people are making toward their mortgage. And there are also programs through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, which is a sister agency of the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, where there may be programs that the borrower may be eligible for. So I really encourage the viewing audience to visit keepyourhomeillinois.org, keepyourhomeillinois.org for more information.
Okay, great. And this information is also available through these workshops you mentioned, because they're not called workshops. You said project, right?
So it's just the name. It's the foreclosure. It's the mortgage relief project, and that's part of the Foreclosure Prevention Network. And these are essentially workshops where we bring in the borrowers. The workshops last for a few hours. They're scheduled on the Illinois Department of Financial Professional Regulation website, and that is idfpr.com, idfpr.com. You can visit our website. There you will also have a calendar of when we're going to be hosting these mortgage relief projects. And these are workshops where we bring the borrowers and the banks together, lenders, to assist and facilitate some type of assistance, as I indicated, whether it be a loan modification or some other type of program to assist that family in need.
Okay. Now, these workshops are also available in Spanish? Or Spanish?
We have Spanish-speaking staff there. We partner with the Attorney General's office, who is also who is a strong advocate and a strong partner with us in this effort.
And what other languages? Because Spanish might be.
We have folks who speak Polish, and we recognize that we have a multi-ethnic and multicultural state, which we're very proud of. As you know, the state of Illinois is an immigrant sanctuary state, and we don't discriminate on the basis of a national origin. So it provides an opportunity for folks from all communities and neighborhoods to access these resources. These resources belong to the people of the state of Illinois.
And the question, I think the natural question is, what about folks who were able to get a loan and they have no documents? What kind of resources are available to them?
Well, to the extent that they were able to secure a loan, they still have rights. And I highly encourage anyone who took out a loan and has questions, been struggling, to take advantage of these programs. The two websites I provided are resources, and you have to. The other message I'd like to is just to convey is the importance of being persistent in this process. If you have a question about your loan, if you're struggling in making a payment, don't wait. We recognize that it's a very difficult, could be a very difficult and challenging thing. You work so hard for your home, and all of a sudden you get that pink slip at work, or something happens, you get hurt on the job, and now you're struggling, the best thing you could do is contact your borrower. Let your borrower know that you're dealing with some issues. Your borrower is interested in working something out. Now, that's not to say that your borrower is going to get it right, or that your borrower is under an obligation to give you a loan modification. That being said, it's still a process that you should engage in, because we find where there is more dialogue, more communication between the borrower and the lender, there's a better likelihood that the borrower is going to receive some relief. The second tip is, do not fall into the trap or fall for a scam where you get a call from someone. I'm seeing texts. These companies now, or these scammers are texting people and telling you, absolutely, I've received some, where they will promise you in exchange for $5,000, $10,000, I will fix your loan. In the state of Illinois, it is unlawful to charge upfront fees for loan modification or loan rescue services. A lot of these folks will say, well, we're doing you a favor, we're doing you a service. That mean bank is trying to take your home. Give us $1,000 and we'll keep it for you. Do not fall for that. That is unlawful.
And so it's through text. How else are they reaching out to?
Phone, you'd be surprised. Email, phone calls, solicitations. And oftentimes, unfortunately, we've also seen instances where through word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
We had one case that we cracked out of Aurora not too long ago, where you had a licensed real estate agent, a licensed loan originator, team up with someone who was wanted on an arrest warrant for mortgage fraud from Georgia, charging people anywhere from $1,000 to $10,000 with the promises of rescuing their mortgage, fixing their mortgage. And what they told these people is, look, I'll call the bank and you don't have to do anything. We'll take care of it for you, and we're going to buy your loan, and you'll just be making payments to us. You won't be making payments to the bank anymore.
They try to make it simple.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of folks, because they were desperate and they felt like they had nowhere else to turn to, and because their friend or their primo or prima, cousin, told them, hey, I'm involved with this thing, this is a good deal, you should do it too, they fell for this scam. And
how many people ended up falling?
There were more than, in this particular case, you had more than 50 properties. So that's more than 50 families. And we partnered up with the Department of Justice, the Postal Service, and now the federal government has also indicted some of these individuals on charges of fraud and taking advantage of these homeowners. So, again, tip number 2 is don't fall for these tricks. The other tip I would have is for someone who is struggling, and if for someone who doesn't necessarily trust their lender, and we understand that sometimes there's a tension between the borrower and the lender, contact a housing counselor that has been approved by HUD. And these housing counselors typically do not charge, they don't charge upfront fees. They work with not-for-profit agencies. Some are work directly for the Attorney General's office, and these individuals can provide assistance in education, in an educational format where they provide you information, to even acting as a conduit to connect you with your bank to try to facilitate some type of an arrangement. And then I would also encourage the viewing audience to contact our agency or to contact the Attorney General's office if you have a question of who to go to and who to trust. We know who is licensed. We license these individuals, so we always tell folks, always do business with someone who's licensed. Don't go to somebody who is not licensed and is going to create risk for you and your family. And if there's any doubt, contact our office and we will help you. And again, you can contact us through idfpr.com or you can contact our hotline, which is 800-532-8785.
We'll also have that graphic up on the screen.
Very good.
But the tips again, know what you're getting into, get educated,
That's right.
go through licensed organizations, and what other tips?
I would say contact your lender.
Contact your lender.
Contact your lender. You know, engage your lender. You'll be surprised. Sometimes, you know, and I hear a lot of good stories. You know, from community banks. You know, these are the smaller banks who represent rural communities. You know, of when they find out from that a customer is hurting, they'll reach out to the customer and they'll ask, hey, you know, how can we work something out? What's going on? And then also just avoiding the scams. Don't fall for that promise. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually will be too good to be true, and that person's not interested in your well-being. That person's interested in socking you for, you know, any kind of money that you're willing to pay that person.
Now, I'm curious about people who have fallen victims. Who do they tend to be, and what happens once they find out, wow, I got caught up in a scam? What can I do? Who should I reach out to? Am I going to get some of my money back? What's going to happen? Am I going to... I'm sure there are a swirl of questions just flowing through their minds.
You know, it's tough. In some instances, some of these individuals, frankly, will never get their money. The best case scenario would be for that person to not engage someone who is not licensed, and then someone who's charging them money up front. Those are
two big,
that's a big warning. Yes,
yeah.
Because it's unlawful in the state of Illinois, and the folks in the industry know that. They know that. Secondly, if you have signed something, you're watching the program right now. If you signed something already, or you contact our office immediately. Contact the Attorney General's office immediately. Again, in the case of the Aurora situation, we were able to help some individuals keep their home, where we contacted the banks.
Okay.
The banks were unaware that this fraud was taking place, and in that sense, they were also the victim of this fraudulent activity, this enterprise. We contacted the bank, informed them that their borrower was targeted for this scam, and in a couple of instances, we were able to help the bank and the borrower work something out and keep that borrower in the home.
Wow,
and that's a big victory.
Yeah, that is.
But sometimes, unfortunately, we see scenarios where the scam is perpetrated. These individuals, you know, are not licensed professionals. They have no ties. Right. They pick up their operation and will go to another community to do the same kind of scam. Now, if it's a licensed entity like a state chartered bank or a national chartered bank, through some of the settlements that we have engaged in, we have been able to provide some relief. Okay. So there were some abuses perpetrated by banks that were actually chartered. However, even in those cases, you know, there may never be the full compensation.
Unfortunately,
that is needed. Now, the other thing too is, look, you know, how do you help a family that's already lost everything? How do you help a family that's already been foreclosed on and has moved on? And those are also it's a challenge in being able to make that family whole again.
That's what I was going to ask you. We're running out of time, so what resources does a family that's lost everything have? You know, if you could just end the show on that.
You know, I would advise them to contact the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
And there's a hotline we're going to provide, but you know, that number is 866-544-7151. Okay. There may be some programs where some of these families who've been wrongfully foreclosed on, they may be eligible for some compensation. But again, the best thing to do is to contact that hotline to inquire.
Well, great. Thank you so much for coming out to share this information with us. We could actually go on forever.
Yes.
And offering really key information for so many families out there. Thanks for sharing it with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Great. And to you, our audience, thank you for joining us. Community Forum is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Community Forum for local issues and concerns every Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.